ॐ ज्ञानं तिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनाशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मीलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितां येन भूतले स्वयं रूपा कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वापदन्तिकम्। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरो श्रीयुतापदकमलं श्रीगुरून् वैष्णवांश श्रीरूपां साग्रजातं सहगना रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधा कृष्णपादान् सहगणललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश। हे कृष्णा करुणा सिन्धो दीनबन्धो जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिकान्त राधाकान्त नमोऽस्तुते। तप्तकाञ्चन गौराङ्गी राधे वृन्दावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये। वंशकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपासिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभो नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैता गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्णा हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। Okay, I'm just going to share my screen. So now that Krishna has described the material world and the reflection, and how the material world is a reflection of the spiritual world, he now discusses the divine and demoniac natures. Because he tells Arjuna that there's two types of people. There's those who are divine and those who are demoniac. And then he assures Arjuna, that you are of the divine nature. But Arjuna is very much facing the uh, the demoniac nature. He's noticing, he's observing that in this world people are so unkind, they're so demoniac, and so he is perplexed and disturbed. And so this is why Krishna then describes to him what is the demoniac nature. Why is it that these people on the opposing side are standing in front of him with arms upraised, with weapons in their hands? Why are they there to attack him? So here's the connection between chapters 14, 15, and 16. Chapter 14 was entitled The Three Modes of Material Nature, right? So it talked about the gunas, sattva, rajas, and tamas. These are the modes of material nature, and these three modes, they they control everything and everyone. And then in chapter 15, Krishna describes that how do these modes actually play out in this material world. Sattva gun are the upper branches. Rajas and tamas are the lower branches of this reflected tree. You may remember the tree had different parts, like the leaves and the branches, and these different parts represented different things. And um, and sattva was the upper branches, rajas and tamas were the lower branches. And now finally in chapter 16, Krishna is practically showing how does sattva, rajas, and tamas manifest in this world? How does it actually, um, play out in this world. And that's the upper branches, which are the divine nature, and the lower branches, which are the demoniac nature. So these are the upper divine branches. These are the lower demoniac branches. The lower demoniac branches being those by which we become more and more entangled. The leaves, I think the twigs were representing fruitive work, fruitive actions. So now here we have chapter 16 overview. In texts 1 through 6, Krishna talks about the transcendental and demoniac qualities. He describes the difference between the two. And then he speaks of the demoniac nature, which is text 7 through 18. And then we have the results of the demoniac activities, which are text 19 through 24. So again, short chapters here. So one thing that is very visible here is what? One thing that is sort of obvious.
A lot of discussion of just the demoniac nature and activities.
Yes, Ravu. Krishna talks so much about the demoniac nature and very little about the divine nature. Because once we're in the divine nature, everything is already clear, right? It's already illuminated. One's existence is already illuminated. But when one is in the demoniac nature, then one needs, most clarification and all these things, what is that? So Krishna is making this very, obvious here in this discussion. And we see this throughout Srila Prabhupada's books. We actually see this, that how when Srila Prabhupada talks about the higher levels of bhakti, like Raganuga Bhakti, Bhava Bhakti, Prema Bhakti, he says very little. If you go in the texts and purports of the Chaitanya Charitamrita, the purports for the advanced stages of bhakti are very short or there's no purport. He says very little. And when he talks about, the basic process of bhakti, sadhana bhakti, or material life, the material world, he has very long purports. Because when we are on the, the physical level, emotional, mental, like this level, then we need philosophy to break out of it. This is the most difficult part, is getting out of this entanglement of material existence, right? And once we're in the spiritual nature, once we are on that level, then automatically it's self-illuminating. Just like recently I asked one advanced devotee in this movement that, what is the meaning of the Gayatri mantra? What is the significance? If the holy name has everything, why we chant the Gayatri mantra? And there's many nice books written on this also by our teachers. But Srila Prabhupada didn't talk so much about it, right? I mean, it's like there's no like book on it or chapters that Prabhupada wrote. He talks so much about the holy name, chanting Hare Krishna, virtually nothing about that. And this devotee responded that that actually when we chant the Gayatri mantra purely, it self-reveals itself. So there's actually so much to it. And yes, in various books, devotees have tried to encapsulate it. But really, when we are qualified to chant and we're chanting it nicely, it reveals itself. And so Prabhupada didn't talk so much about it. He told us the importance, we should do it. And he talks more about chanting Hare Krishna, more about getting to that point. But then after that, it's there like that. So the same thing with the divine qualities, that Krishna's describing the divine qualities in brief. Because once we are situated in the divine nature, then everything becomes illuminated. And he describes this so many times in different parts of the Gita, that the stage of sattva, the stage of transcendence, is self-illuminating. Krishna from within the heart guides one how to progress. Krishna within the heart reveals so many things. So really, Krishna is trying to tell us in this chapter, avoid the demoniac nature, avoid the demoniac mindset. And once we are out of that mindset, then things will become clear. So text 1 through 3, Daivim and Asuram, Sampadam. Sampadam Daivim, divine qualities. Sampadam Asurim are demoniac qualities. So these are the words referring to the divine nature and the demoniac nature. So the Sampadam Daivim, which is the divine nature, Krishna talks about divine nature and he just lists all the qualities. And this is a very famous list of qualities in chapter 16, and very nice to meditate upon. As he discussed, Krishna doesn't spend so many verses, but he definitely gives us the clear path on what is the divine nature. He says fearlessness, purification of one's existence, cultivation of knowledge, charity, self-control, sacrifice, Vedic study, austerity, simplicity, non-violence, truthfulness, freedom from anger, renunciation, tranquility, aversion to fault-finding, compassion, freedom from covetousness, gentleness, steady determination, vigor, modesty, forgiveness, fortitude, cleanliness, freedom from envy, freedom from the passion for honor. These are the qualities of those in the divine nature. Very interesting that Prabhupada mentions, that Krishna mentions fearlessness first, because fearlessness is actually the quality of the mode of goodness. One time, Srila Prabhupada was asked, what is it like to be a pure devotee? Because he's a pure devotee, so disciples went and said, what is it like to be a pure devotee? And Srila Prabhupada responded, I have no fear. I have no fear. When we look at the lower species of life, the more lower the species of life, the more fear they live in. Like you see a squirrel, it's eating. Like it eats one bite, looks left, looks right, and then eats another, it looks left, looks right. At night, the dog, when it sleeps, like every few minutes it wakes up, or the moment there's a sound, it wakes up. Because day and night, they live in fear. So another animal is going to come and eat us. And as we advance in the evolutionary cycle, we see there's less and less fear. The cow, she's in the mode of goodness, very, peaceful, not so much fear. Even though a tiger can come and eat the cow also, but they don't live in so much fear. Similarly, the human being, even more less fear. At least we have houses, we close the doors, all these things. But then modern society is actually trying to increase the fear. Right? This is, you see movies today, there's so much violence, and it's all about violence. I don't watch movies, but when we come on the plane, my mother also noticed this. I also noticed this separate occasions on flights. Like every screen that's going there, you just see so much violence and gruesome violence that was unthought about, especially on a plane where there's children, so many people here and there who can see the screen being shown. And uh, and it's just to increase fear in society, right? More, people think more about murder, about this and that, will feel afraid. So fearfulness is the sign of the demoniac nature and causing, fear in others, and fearlessness, being free from fear, is only possible by dependence upon God, is a sign of the daiva, of the divine nature. So it's very interesting, like sometimes Krishna's order also, in which he mentioned things, like he wants to emphasize certain things. So then the biggest fear being the fear of death. When a person is in the material consciousness, they're always afraid because they're fearful of death. They don't understand death, and they're very attached. So that's why death is something very disturbing to them. But one in the divine nature um, is not so fearful. So here Prabhupada explains, for a sannyasi, the first qualification should be fearlessness, because a sannyasi has to be alone without any support or guarantee of support. He is simply to depend on the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. If one thinks, after I leave my connections, who will protect me? He should not accept the renounced order of life. One must be one must be fully convinced that Krishna, or the Supreme Personality of Godhead, in his localized aspect as Paramatma, is always within, that he is seeing everything, and he always knows what one intends to do. One must thus One must thus have firm conviction that Krishna as Paramatma will take care of a soul surrendered to him. I shall never be alone, one should think. Even if I live in the darkest regions of a forest, I shall be accompanied by Krishna, and he will give me all protection. That conviction is called abhayam, fearlessness. This state of mind is necessary for a person in the renounced order of life. Abhayam, fearlessness. This state of mind is necessary for a person in the renounced order of life. And that's why, because the sannyasi has the mindset of fearlessness in the varnashram system, they are considered to be on the highest level of realization because they're fearless. They go in the forest alone, they travel alone, fearless, because not out of some artificial sense of macho-ness, but because of an actual dependence on Krishna. They're convinced that Krishna is there. Therefore, if he's there, he will protect me. Tapas, or austerity. Then now, one by one, we're going through each of the divine qualities that Prabhupada explains. Because Prabhupada has a very long purport. He explains each one in detail. Tapas or austerity is especially meant for the retired life. One should not remain a householder throughout his whole life. He must always remember that there are four divisions of life: brahmachari, grahastha, vanaprastha, and sannyasi. So after grahastha, householder life, one should retire. If one lives for 100 years, he should spend 25 years in student life, 25 in household life, 25 in retired life, and 25 in the renounced order of life. These are the regulations of the Vedic religious discipline. A man retired from household life must practice austerities of the body, mind, and tongue. That is tapasya. The entire Varnashram Dharma society is meant for tapas, for tapasya. Without tapasya or austerity, no human being can get liberation. So the reason why I have this picture here is because in modern society, the exact opposite is in the mindset of people. People think that retired life is now a life of sleeping, just enjoying life, doing nothing for society. Now I'm retired. Now it's my time to just sit on a beach. This is why the average age in many cities, in most cities of Florida, is 70 years old. That's the average age. Everyone moves to Florida, and now finally let me enjoy life. But this mindset is not a spiritual mindset. This mindset is a material mindset. Actually, the spiritual mindset is exactly the opposite. That every stage of life is a life of austerity. And the austerity of brahmachari life is Vedic practice, study of scriptures, disciplined life. The austerity of grahastha life is taking care of the household, the children, all these things are so difficult. And at the same time, not just that we're engaged in our household life, um, uh, cultivating our spiritual life by facilitating the Krishna consciousness movement, right? Serving the devotees, providing for the other three ashrams. They're all dependent on the grahastha because the other three ashrams are not earning. They are depending upon sustenance from the single ashram, the grahastha ashram. So hosting guests, devotee guests, helping financially in the Krishna consciousness movement, practicing Krishna consciousness within the home, making our family members into devotees. Then in Vanaprastha, when one retires, then it's even more meant for austerity. That is even more. Because now one is free from household duties, one can actually practice more austerity. And the training in brahmachari life then comes very handy, where one can renounce his day-to-day material entanglements and perform austerity. And finally, we have the sannyas ashram, which is a realization of the ultimate truth, which is Krishna. The best sacrifice recommended in this age is called Sankirtan Yajna. This Sankirtan Yajna, so the householder's duty is described here. The chanting of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, is the best and most inexpensive sacrifice. Everyone can adopt it and derive benefit. So these three items, namely charity, sense control, and performance of sacrifice, are meant for the householder. Charity, sense control, and performance of sacrifice are meant for the householder. We think, oh, household life means no sense control. It's a very disciplined life, actually. Of course, there's some leeway there where one can enjoy life with family, whatever material desires one has. There's an avenue in a regulated way to fulfill those. But it's regulation. It's not that there's no sense control. Charity is the duty of the householder. Lord Chaitanya says in the Chaitanya Bhagavad that the most important religious duty, Lord Chaitanya is saying, of a householder is charity. Because that's offering the results of our hard work to Krishna. That's what we are doing in household life, is earning money. And so if we do everything else, but we don't offer the very thing that we're working hard day and night for, then we're not offering what we have for Krishna's service. And then the performance of sacrifice, that is the chanting of the holy name of Krishna. So yajna, dana, and tapa. This is yajna, this is dana, and tapa. These cannot be given up by anyone, Krishna says in the Gita. All the way from brahmachari to sannyas, no one can give up yajna, dana, and tapa. Dana for the sannyasi is the dana of spiritual knowledge, the charity of spiritual knowledge. And for all ashrams, we're giving spiritual knowledge, most basic charity. That is the preaching movement. So we can never give up preaching, Krishna is saying. Yajna, dana, tapa. These can never be given up. Yajna, sacrifice. We can never give up the chanting of the holy name. We can never give up dana, preaching Krishna consciousness, what we have, giving it to others. And we can never give up tapa, which is austerity. The rules and regulations of bhakti. That's why we have the four regulated principles, must always be there, along with chanting the holy name of Krishna. Swadhyaya, Vedic study, is meant for the brahmachari or student life. Brahmachari should have no connection with women. They should live a life of celibacy and engage the mind in the study of Vedic literature for cultivation of spiritual knowledge. This is called svadhyaya. And again, modern society is exactly the opposite. As soon as they're teenagers, they're put into, high schools and colleges where men and women are mixing freely. Movies, television, internet, these are all meant to destroy brahmacharya life. And there's no brahmachari life, therefore no swadhyaya, no Vedic study. There's no focused mind. Now the mind is so agitated. Before, student life was the most focused time in a person's life, and people would accomplish so much. They would learn so much. They would go for study. They would, character would be developed. Austerities and study would go hand in hand. But now now young kids, they can't even focus for 2 minutes. They need to see their phone every 2 minutes. No spiritual development, no practice of austerity, brahmacharya life. So then the product is clear. The result is also clear. But these years, Prabhupada says, are the most formative years. If one practices spiritual life during these years and develops that discipline, then throughout one's life, one is very happy. One is very successful. As far as the Brahminical quality of simplicity is concerned, not only should a particular order of life follow this principle, but every member, be he in the Brahmachari ashram, Grihastha ashram, Vanaprastha ashram, or Sannyas ashram, one should be very simple and straightforward. Apaishunam means that one should not find fault with others or correct them unnecessarily. Of course, to call a thief is not fault finding, but to call an honest person a thief is very much offensive for one who is making advancement in spiritual life. So, if we call a thief, Prabhupada here is defining, that's not fault finding. And says, well, aversion to fault finding, and therefore the devotee lets anything bad that's going on go past it because the devotee doesn't see fault. How does that work? No, it doesn't work like that. On one hand, a devotee must uh, be a leader in society and must help remove, you could say, corruption, injustice. And unless a person sees that and sees the difference between good and bad, how can one remove it? At the same time, Krishna is saying a devotee has aversion to fault finding. So, how can both of those things be true? They're true because Prabhupada is explaining what this means. That one has an aversion to unnecessarily find fault. Most of the time, people are finding fault because they like to find fault unnecessarily. A devotee, by all means, wants to avoid it, really doesn't want to find fault. But uh, very, you could say, very um, uh, uh, out of, the word is escaping me, but um, being finally forced to find fault, a devotee will find fault, so to say, will point out a problem if it is true, but not that they're excited to, okay, look, see, this fault is there, let's enjoy the fact that this person has this fault, but as a matter of duty, they're just correcting where there's a fault, but not trying to call an honest person a thief. That brings great reaction, is very offensive for one who is making advancement. So when we make a false accusation, we falsely accuse devotees. We know in our heart, they're not bad, they didn't mean this, but we sometimes find ways of framing them in such a way that they must be bad people, this, that. So that creates a reaction in our heart and mind. If there's an actual fault, then the devotee is very self-sacrificing by making the effort to try to solve it, because it actually is a burden on a devotee, but they take up that burden. Akrodha means to check anger. Even if there's provocation, one should be tolerant. For once one becomes angry, his whole body becomes polluted. Even if there's provocation, one should be tolerant, for once one becomes angry, his whole body becomes polluted. Anger is a product of the mode of passion and lust. So one who is transcendently situated should check himself from anger. So this is why the sages, when they were performing some yajna, they would have the kshatriyas protecting the yajna. Because if someone came and attacked the yajna, the demons did, and they fought against them, they would have to exhibit anger, because to fight one has to be angry. And if they exhibited anger, then their yajna would be destroyed. It would not bring fruit. So the same thing is true of the Sankirtan yajna, the holy name of Krishna. If we are feeling angry and chanting, it's hard to chant. So devotee does not have, when devotee does one's duty in terms of correcting, fixing things, but ultimately depends upon Krishna, knows that ultimately the results of one's own actions determine what good or bad comes to a person, and that's why, to oneself, and that's why it does not feel angry at the instrument of his karma. As Prabhupada says, one should not feel angry at the instrument of their karma. So once one deeply realizes this point, that this is happening because Krishna is trying to purify my existence, because I am not pure, or there's some past sinful action that is being purified, then one deals with the problem, but one does not feel anger, because one knows that Krishna is the ultimate controller. And when one does not feel anger, then one is transcendently situated. Because we see in the scriptures also, the great sages and munis, they fell down, not so often because of lust. Even lust could not conquer them, but they fell down primarily due to anger. When they, felt angry, someone, they cursed someone or something like this, like we see in the scriptures, then that affected their spiritual life very deeply. So akrodha is the practice of trying to check one's anger, understanding things philosophically, reflecting on it, and not reacting or feeling angry in a situation. Can the qualities be changed? Yes, by association. So what brings about divine qualities? Divine association. And that's why association is so important. What brings about demoniac qualities? For sure, demoniac association. Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he says, Asat Sangatyag, Ye Vaishnavachar. He says, who is a Vaishnav? A Vaishnav is one who gives up bad association. It's interesting, he doesn't even say a Vaishnav is one who accepts good association. He says one who gives up bad association. But as long as we are in bad association, we cannot get the determination to practice Krishna consciousness. We cannot get these qualities. We cannot inherit these qualities of divine qualities in that bad association. So in text 5, Krishna is talking about the association, and we should be very clear on this point. This is why Prabhupada recommended that the children, they go to Gurukul or some spiritual atmosphere. Why? Because it is the association in brahmachari life that determines the qualities one will get. If one is associating with people of undesirable quality, then how can one have different qualities? Unless one is a pure devotee of the Lord, one will inherit the qualities of one's association. So it's all about association. Sampadam asuram, pride, arrogance, conceit. So now we covered just a few of them. We can go through all 26 of those qualities. that are listed there. I think there's 26. I can't remember if this is the 26 qualities or not, but we just cover the main ones in the interest of time, or not the main ones, the ones that Prabhupada talks about a lot. And now we're looking at the demoniac qualities: pride, arrogance, conceit, anger, harshness, and ignorance. These qualities belong to those of demoniac nature, O son of Partha. And then later on, he also gives three more: lust, anger, and greed. So, what's the first quality mentioned here? Pride, right? So I was thinking, why didn't Krishna say humility? Well, here in the demoniac nature, he lists the opposite of humility as the first quality of the demoniac. Because as you know, in other lists, Krishna lists humility as the number one quality. We just covered that actually. Was it chapter 15? I can't remember. We just covered it. Krishna was listing the qualities. I think 14, and he mentions humility as the first quality of one in the mode of goodness. And here again, he emphasizes that pride is the quality of one who's a demon. The demons are very proud. The devotees are very humble. And in case we didn't get the point, next one again he mentions arrogance, pride, arrogance, conceit, anger. Again, we mentioned freedom from anger to be daivim sampadam, and anger is sampadam asuram, and harshness. So even as devotees, we should not be harsh towards others, because that is a asuri quality. Sometimes if we're a devotee, then we can be harsh, but no, that is the quality of a demon. These qualities belong to those of demoniac nature, or Sarabharta. Lust, anger, and greed, Vitaraga, Bhaya, Krodha, these are the qualities. Lust, anger, and greed are the three gates to hell, Krishna says. So if we want to become free, we must give up lust, anger, and greed. The word abhijatasya, in reference to one born of transcendental qualities or godly tendencies, is very significant. To beget a child in a godly atmosphere is known in the Vedic scriptures as Garbhodhana Samskara. If the parents want a child in the godly qualities, they should follow the 10 principles recommended for the social life of the human being. So these are the 10 principles of the Garbhodhan Sanskar. Why Garbhodhan Sanskar was so important? Because by this Garbhodhan Sanskar and by the practice of the spiritual life of the parents, the soul that is attracted to the parents has the same consciousness as the parents. So why are, demoniac souls attracted to demoniac wombs? Because they're attracted to a certain consciousness. And whatever our consciousness is, we will take birth in our next life in that same atmosphere, because it's our subtle body. It's a combination of sattva, rajas, and tamas that actually develops our next life. So presently, by our current actions, we're developing our next life. And if we have a lot of rajas, less tamas, and less sattva, then we will accordingly be put in a place that has a lot of rajas, where we can be passionate and fulfill our passion and desires. This is why people are often happy in the place where they are. We wonder, well, people, who are living in countries where the opportunity for material enjoyment is not there so much, how are they happy? Well, they're happy because they weren't looking for it so much. We were looking for it. That's why, like in my case, we're here in America. It's the place of passion, right? As much as possible, fulfill our passion right here. So the Garbhodhan Sanskar was a way of attracting a soul uh, that will be born that is of the same consciousness of the parents. And because Garbhodan Sanskar was done so well before, if the parents are Brahmanas, then they will attract a child that is a Brahmana. And the Vedic system, which accepts that Varnashram is based upon guna and karma, right? By qualities and activities, not janma and karma, not birth and activities, but qualities and activities. Even that system, even in that system, the demarcation of the of the activity that one did was assumed to be by birth. Why? Because even though it's based upon guna and karma, because Garbhodan Sanskar was followed so perfectly, a child born in a certain family did have that guna and karma. Now in Kali Yuga, when people aren't following Garbhodan Sanskar, the guna and karma teaching is very important. And that's why we don't follow the modern caste system, which is based upon birth and jati. We follow it based upon guna and karma. But if we see previous times, even in Mahabharata, it was being followed by Janma. Karna was thought to be born in the family of a fisherman. So no one could accept him as a Kshatriya. Even Arjuna and Yudhishthira, they could not accept him. He said, well, why? They were pure devotees. If they're pure devotees, why were they not looking at guna and karma? Because at that time it was just like no one, every single person in society. And if every single person in society doing it, you assume that that's the case, was born in the family of their guna and karma. A Brahmana would only be born in a Brahmana's family. A Kshatriya would only be born in a Kshatriya's family. A Vaishya would be born in a Vaishya's family, and similarly, a Shudra would be born in a Shudra's family. Because of Garbhodhan Sanskar. It was being done so nicely. And so if now someone is born who's a Kshatriya in a Shudra family, people just thought something must be really wrong here. So that's why that confusion was there at times. So Prabhupada in modern times, in our present uh, process of bhakti, he said Garbhodan Sanskar is when the parents, they chant 64 rounds every day for a month before conception. Why? Because if the parents' consciousness is elevated, then they'll attract the soul that is of that same consciousness that wants to be a devotee. So he's saying this to make life easier for the devotee parents. Oh, your child will be a nice devotee. And so Prabhupada wasn't into ritual, but he gave us the essence of all the rituals. So Garbhodan Sanskar is very complex, this, that. But the essence of it is that if you're spiritually minded, you'll get a spiritual child. Spiritually minded child. All children are spiritual, but a spiritually inclined child. Of course, sometimes that's not the case because of Krishna's desire, our past karma. Just like some very great souls in our movement were born in families that didn't even know about Krishna consciousness. They're eating meat, this, that. But they were just born in the family of people who aren't devotees. And in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Prabhupada in one purport says that in Kali Yuga, Lord Chaitanya puts great souls sometimes in demoniac families just to show the greatness of the Sankirtan movement. That even someone in a very fallen family can become very elevated by the effect of chanting the holy name of Krishna. And that's true, that even if one is not a great soul, one is born in a demoniac family, because the Sankirtan movement is so powerful, it can change anyone's heart. So nothing to be disheartened if our children don't seem to be so divine at the time of their birth. The Sankirtan movement is there. If we give them that atmosphere while they're growing up, or at any point in their life, and if they take to it, then uh, it's it will have the transformative effect. Abhijatasya. These demoniac qualities are taken on by them from the beginning of their bodies in the wombs of their mothers. As they grow, they manifest all these inauspicious qualities. So babies always look cute, right? No matter which baby they are, they're really harmless. But as they grow, they manifest all these inauspicious qualities. So even devotee children, all devotee children are pure devotees when they're like 6, 7 years old. But the time comes when they're teenagers and post-teenagers. That's when the parents are surprised. Why my child? I thought he's a pure devotee. Why these are? Because those are our vasanas then coming through and they become manifest later in life. And so that's why the early years are so important for training, formative years, uh, teaching them from Srila Prabhupada's books, having them get as much spiritual knowledge. Because when those vasanas start to appear, that spiritual knowledge and training will come in handy. It will ground them. One will say, oh, what is the need? They're already devotees. Why you? Because later on, the need will be very clear. Why that was so needed. Why that spiritual knowledge and education and training and attraction for Krishna that develops from a natural spiritual life becomes so important. Here it says, Ma shucha sampadam daivim abhijato si pandava. Do not worry, O son of Pandu, for you are born with divine qualities. So Prabhupada in one lecture on this purport, he says, Arjuna is so humble. When he hears the divine and demoniac qualities, he starts to worry that maybe I have demoniac qualities. Maybe I am a demon because I have all these bad qualities in me. He's so humble. This is greatness of a pure soul. So then Krishna, just to assure him, he says, do not worry. Arjuna, even if you try to be bad, you cannot be bad because you are born with the divine qualities. And this is again the devotee. If an advanced devotee is there, then from their birth they have these divine qualities. They're so much grounded in the divine nature that even if they want, they are unable, they do not act sinfully. I mean, they don't want, that's the point. But even if in any situation, they can only think to act in a divine way. So he is an eternal soul, eternally liberated soul, devotee of Krishna. So Krishna is establishing that Arjuna is divine. Mashusha sampada daivim abhijato si pandava. His involvement in the fight was not demoniac because he was considering the pros and cons, not acting under the influence of anger, false prestige, or harshness. That is quality of a devotee. In this world, there are two kinds of created beings. One is called the divine, and the other demoniac. Bhagavad Gita 16:6. So, two types being divine and other demoniac. Now, our personal experience feels that there's something in the middle also, right? Lokesmin deva asuram evacha. So why Krishna saying that you're either divine or you're demoniac? Because it sounds very scary. I mean, I'm obviously not divine, so it must be demoniac. Prabhupada explains this. So they do not like people in divine nature. The demoniac do not like people in divine nature. They will tolerate all kinds of noise, barking of the dogs, the motor car passing, the airplane on overhead. But as soon as there's kirtan, they're disturbed. They'll tolerate so many different types of noise, but they'll not tolerate kirtan. So he's so the demoniac, they cannot stand divine personalities and their activities. In the morning at 7 o'clock, we used to hold our class, and there was little sound. Immediately, the tenants from upwards, they'll come down and complain. Sometimes they will call for police. And on the street, Second Avenue, there's always big trucks and motor cars going on. Heavy sound. Then in your country, the garbage carrier sound. So true. Is it the garbage trucks? The morning that they come, it's like always. Uh, the digging sound. So many sounds they'll tolerate. And as soon as Hare Krishna, oh, it is intolerable. This is demoniac. Prabhupada, with such clear logic, he's saying this. Text 13 to 15. How does a demoniac person think? So much wealth do I have today, and I will gain more according to my schemes. So much is mine now, and it will increase in the future more and more. He is my enemy, and I have killed him, and my other enemies will also be killed. I am the Lord of everything. I am the enjoyer. I am perfect, powerful, and happy. I am the richest man, surrounded by aristocratic relatives. There is none so powerful and happy as I am. I shall perform sacrifices. I shall give some charity, and thus I shall rejoice. In this way, such persons are deluded by ignorance. So it's all about money, isn't it? And so here, that's the first thing he's describing. It's all about money, and then for money, you make friends and enemies. This is my enemy. I have to be top dog. They're little dog. Even very rich people, they don't get caught, but there's so many um, credible evidences that they have killed people, and that's why they've um, of course they've destroyed the path for their future life. But that's how they are feeling. They're clearing their path. They kill so many people, even very polished people in America who are very, very wealthy. Someone else actually developed the technology, is actually the genius. They want it, so then they can patent it and become, everyone's going to buy the product from them, and uh, and they kill that person. I am the Lord of everything. I am the enjoyer. I am perfect, powerful, and happy. I am the richest man, surrounded by aristocratic relatives. There's none so powerful and happy as I am. I shall perform sacrifices. I shall give some charity, and thus I shall rejoice. In this way, such persons are deluded by ignorance. We must learn, we must earn our money legally. Earning money for Krishna should be done according to his laws, and we should be satisfied with whatever we get by honest labor. Right? So we should never be dishonest. We should be honest, and we should only uh, get what we can get through honest means. Never. That's what Bhaktivinoda Thakur says. We just observed his disappearance day. He says that how we can do, we can pursue whatever we like, but he says give up sinful life. He has a few bhajans where he says that. He says whatever it is, give up sinful life. Don't act sinfully, because the reactions of those are very, very heavy, he says. So we want to, we're not sannyasis. We haven't, okay, get married, have a nice family, enjoy life, but don't engage in illicit activities. Similarly, we want to earn money, have a business, work hard, earn money, but don't engage in uh, dishonest activities. And then, if as devotees we are honestly pursuing, we're not doing sinful activities, and we're chanting Hare Krishna, and we're offering the results of our material desires to Krishna. We want to make money, we offer some of that, then we will make advancement, and then the effect will be the opposite. But if we act illegally, that is against the laws of God, then we are in big trouble. So he's appealing to his readers to please give up sinful life. Whatever we are doing sinful, that we must give up. And you'll be surprised that even as devotees, we struggle with this so much on different levels. These are the sinful activities here, right? The meat eating, illicit sex, intoxication, gambling. And so let's see, how much more do we have left? I just want to end here soon. Okay, we have quite a bit left. Okay, so we will end here. This is exactly now 1 hour. And we did the first part. Next time we will start from the discussion on what is the fundamental difference between the divine and the demoniac, right? What is the key difference, because as I was mentioning, we find people in the middle. But what is in Krishna's mind when he says there's a divine or demoniac? Maybe I can end with this one rather than leaving you on a cliffhanger. It's where we find our shelter. So those who are devotees, they also have so many material desires. And sometimes people say that, the karmis are even nicer than the devotees. Sometimes devotees can also be very mean. Sometimes non-devotees can also be very nice. So people get very confused. What is better then? Why should I associate with devotees? Because daivim prakritim ashrita. The devotees, they have material desires, they have faults, but they're ashrita. They have taken shelter in Krishna. They're doing it, but they know what is right. The goal is clear, goal is Krishna. The materialists, even if they have good qualities, they have taken ahankaram ashrita. They have taken shelter of the false ego. They have taken kamam ashrita. They have taken shelter in lust. They actually take shelter in lust, in their lust. That is, they feel the right thing. So, though they may even have good qualities, their goal is lust, ahankara, ego. And so eventually that's where they're going to come to. The devotee has faults and material desires, but they've taken shelter in Krishna. They know that the goal is Krishna. Then that's what they will eventually come to. And in the meantime, they may make hell for people around them, but at least they're progressing in that direction. For example, the example is a devotee may not be humble, may be arrogant, but they know that the goal is humility. It's clear. They'll say, "Well, I can't be humble in this case," but they at least know that humility is the goal, right? Whereas the materialist, you actually see, and many of you who have jobs outside, you all have experience, their goal is you have to be a proud man. It's actually in material life, you say, want to be a humble person. They'll look at you like, what's wrong with you? It's considered bad to be humble. It's like weakness. Don't be a humble person, be a proud person. Or if you are not a womanizer and you're not, lusting for power and position, then they think something is wrong with you. So the goal is very clear, and that's why um, the process of bhakti is so nice that if we're in the process of bhakti, it will drag us to the ultimate destination. And one who is in that process, though they may have faults, are of divine nature. One who has forsaken that process or is not accepting that process, they are of the demoniac nature. Because we all have faults, but they've taken a path that is not helping them remove those faults. Whereas a devotee who has these asuram qualities has taken a path that will make the asuram qualities go away and accept the daivi qualities. So I'll end here. This is the discussion on divine demonic natures. Anyone have any comments, questions, reflections?
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
This, this is Rupa Madhuri. I just wanted to add something
Mm,
you had mentioned. All the way, your class is awesome all the time.
mm,
Um, so you had mentioned how you people can be a devotee,
mm,
even if did not born in, in Krishna consciousness. I just wanted to share with you this
mm,
because it is just very true. I
mm,
born in the family we were eating everything.
mm,
So there's a Krishna always keep his eyes on to everybody. So
mm,
my auntie went to book fair about the Bhagavad Gita, and my mom got that. And my
mm,
mom is so eager to visit the
mm,
temple. And we did went. And as soon as we stood, in front of the deity, we fall
mm,
in love.
mm.
That was so dear. So that's
Yes,
all I want to share about this. Thank you so much, Prabhu.
thank you. No, and see, actually, very often, thank you for also bringing light to that. Very often, people who are not born in devotee families, they, especially we see just by observing our movement, we can see they are sometimes even more spiritually advanced than those, or spiritually developed than those born in devotee families.
Yeah.
Because those born in devotee families oftentimes don't value what they have. But those who are not born, like you said, the moment they see it, they become attracted to it and they give their life to it. So what's better? The
Yes.
birth in which you give your life to Krishna is better. So the external circumstance is very less important. But the main thing is the internal cultivation and the internal desire to serve Krishna. This is just Prabhupada here is describing, the process of Garbhodhan Sanskar. That, if let's say all of us here are devotees, and if someone is planning to have a child, this is how they should think, that my consciousness will attract a certain soul. So we should prepare for that. We should, the point being that conception and uh, bringing a soul into this world was a very conscientious activity before, very intentional. Like, okay, we're intending to have a child, take permission from the spiritual master, do Garbhodhan Sanskar, which Prabhupada said in Kali Yuga is chanting the holy name of Krishna, and then we invite the soul. So that's basically he's teaching something that is practical. But in terms of what a soul is bringing, where they're being born, how Krishna conscious they are, only Krishna knows, and we cannot see from an external point of view.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Yes, thank you. Very nice. Any other thoughts, reflections, questions?
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Quick
Hare Krishna.
question. Are the divine and demoniac qualities or nature only apply to human beings or to other species as well?
Uh, Pretty much only to human beings, because the other species, this is why they don't get good or bad karma, because based on the divine and demoniac activities that a human being does, a person is born in the other species. In that species, one has to conditioning of that body will determine what you will do. A tiger isn't divine or demoniac. It will eat because that's its nature. However, we can classify different species based upon sattva, rajas, and tamas. One species is more in sattva, the other is more in rajas. Like the cow is more in goodness, the lion, tiger is in passion, and snakes, fishes, sharks, these are all in the mode of ignorance, primary, more so. At the same time, we must understand that all animals are primarily in the mode of ignorance. Because when we're in the guna, or in the quality of ignorance, then we slide down to the animal species of life. But within that ignorance, some have more goodness, because it's not all ignorance, right? So the cow will have more goodness, the lion will have more passion, but none of them have the higher knowledge like the human being does, have the higher intelligence like the human being does, except, of course, exceptions like Bharat Maharaj and great devotees who, for some specific reason, may be in that animal species of life. But the norm is they're all pretty much in the mode of ignorance. Yes. See, divine and demoniac has a sense of choice, right? I can be divine or demonic based upon my choice. Animals don't have choice. They don't have that freedom. Vijay Nrsimha Prabhu?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you for this class.
Okay.
My question was on the same lines. Just thought of that. Is there a way to explain within a certain species, there are different characteristics you see within, like, say, a dog? You'll have a dog that's always biting, barking, causing havoc, and then we have a dog that is always kind and compassionate. And can we explain that? How do we explain that?
So actually, Prabhupada, not that specific thing, but he says something similar. He says that some dogs in America, they have better lives than humans. And some dogs in India, for example, they're running for their life. They're getting bitten by other dogs. They're starving and skinny. So due to bad karma, one becomes a dog. But if one has very bad karma, one may be a street dog. If one has bad karma, but some good karma, then one may be, a dog in a Porsche, getting, a shampoo every 2 weeks and getting knee surgery when they're, bones are getting arthritis. Like one of my colleagues, she said, I know this is kind of a first world problem, but I'm just really struggling for finances for for taking care of my pet's surgery. Like he needs surgery in both knees, and it's like $15,000, and I'm just trying to save up for this. So difficult. And so people here, they're getting better. They're caring for their dogs in a way that even humans don't get that care. So yeah. Yes, Prabhu. So that karma is still being played out in the animal species, but they're not gaining good or bad karma. That's the difference. So as a human being, we can change our karma. That is, gain future good or bad karma or break out of the cycle. The animal is simply burning off the good and bad karma that they have. Similarly, the demigod is simply burning off the good karma and some bad karma that they have. Just like there's gradations of souls among the demigods, you can be Indra or you can be an ordinary demigod based upon the amount of piety. Similarly, in the animal species of life, you can be, have different gradations. Like in the case of demigods, for example, this is also why we see that in the scriptures, we see this, that they just enjoy. And when they do something wrong, they get away with it. And many times devotees ask us, like, Indra, he's a devotee and he sleeps with a sage's wife, right? And he's still a devotee and he's still the king of heaven. Now, if we did that in this world, I mean, we would be cursed and, thrown out, I mean, what to speak of being the king of heaven? We wouldn't be allowed in the temple, right? And he rapes the wife of a sage and he's fine. I mean, how is this at all fair, or how is this an example for us? Well, that's because he's a demigod, right? In the devas, they do have a free pass. They're simply burning off their good karma. Just like an animal can eat, do something very bad, kill another animal or person, and that's their nature. They don't get reaction for it. The demigod, same thing. It's a temporary, result of their pious karma. They're burning off good karma. But then they must come back as a human being, and then they will get good and bad karma. Of course, in the case of a demigod, there's still some responsibility, and this is why they get cursed. And Indra does suffer when he does things bad, right? When he killed the sage Vishwarupa for 1,000 years, he had to be in the Mansarovar lake, and he couldn't leave the lake because the moment he did, his sinful reaction would chase him, and he had to perform austerities for 1,000 years. So, I mean, that's just one verse, and we kind of miss through it. Oh, he did austerities, and then he's king of, but it's a big deal, I mean, yeah. So if we do something like this, if we do austerity for 1,000 years, we'll get free of it, right? So the other reaction. So he does get a reaction, but still, there's a certain license there because only human life we actually gain good or bad karma in normal circumstances.
So is it then correct to say that the different characteristics of two dogs within the same species is due to what their previous life was and what they did in that life? So even though they did some bad, they came as a dog, but they had some good qualities, so they're still showing some compassion. Or is that correct to think like that? Or
Well, uh, yes, but at the same time, a dog may not be showing compassion, right? They are acting according to their instinct. So the trainer has trained them to have those qualities, or maybe their circumstance has made them like that. Where as little puppies they're treated with love or something, so they're doing that. So whether or not they're actually showing compassion would involve a very elevated soul who, like Bharat Maharaj, has somehow entered the dog species. So most likely they're not showing compassion, but most likely they have good karma that is making them be born in a comfortable dog life where they got nice training and they weren't abused as a small puppy, and as a result they don't bark and bite as much. Of course, they have the dog nature. All dogs will bark because of their nature, but they won't like bite as much.
okay, thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you. Yes. Okay, so I think we're at our time. And so next week, we will start from where we left off. Please continue with your reading and your homework. And we're almost coming to the end of the Gita. So a few more sessions will be at the end. And then I will share the exams with all of you. We will, Rashmi Mataji is here, I think, and she may have just left. I know she's here, yes. And so we will share the exams with all of you. And those of you who are taking the course for the certificate. So you can start finishing the homework and preparing for the upcoming exam. The exam will be based on the homework questions, as always. So that's why it's very important to complete the homework. Yes. Yes. Okay. All right. So, any final questions? We'll end here.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare
Thank you,
Krishna.
Prabhu.
Thank you so much,
Hare
Prabhu.
Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank
Hare
you,
Krishna.
Prabhu.
Dandavat
Hare
pranam.
Krishna.
Hare